Hi everyone. Yeah, hi Gabriel Franklin, sketching and drawing, Marsa. Oh, very kind of you to say you've inspired me, inspired you. I'm not sure really what I'm gonna draw today, but I'll just start as I usually do with some random kind of gesture stuff. Hi Kuman. Yeah, I've had an okay day. Bit quiet, but Hellboy and Corals Master says. Hey Matthew. I've got my iPad set up here so I can read the comments. So if there's any questions, please, fire away. How are you recovering? I'm doing okay, yeah. Pretty slow, and as you can hear in the background there, pretty clumsy. Tend to drop things a lot and make a mess wherever I go. I did a fair bit of that before anyway, so yeah, I'm doing okay. Kind of gets a bit boring, I suppose, me moaning about how it's not going as fast as I want it to go, but I think that's just the nature of the injury of the stroke. Really, can't really rush anything. It just happens incrementally every day. Hopefully, you look for a little bit of progress. I'm still having to use these kind of silicon adapters. Mars, no, it doesn't affect both hands. Unfortunately, it's my dominant hand only, so I can still, use the right hand probably actually a bit more naturally, or feels more control with the right than the left. But as I said on the live stream I did yesterday on Insta, that if I focus too much on drawing with the right, it's going to hamper my recovery of the left, I think. Yeah, Blackwing are great, aren't they? Yeah, they're really good. So this is kind of how I start my mecha armor design stuff. Quite a random set of lines, and I'll keep going in and erasing until I start to see something that's feels like a kind of a design, really. Always trying to, as I'm going along, work in a bit of perspective in there as well. So usually like this is starting to form. It's usually starts with the head first. What oils do I use? I've used a lot of different ones. The latest ones I've been using have been a brand called Michael Harding, and they're quite a nice, they're a really nice sort of deep pigment and good like consistency to them. They've also got a pretty crazy range of colours, going from almost neons to more traditional colours. But I'm really, as I said on the stream yesterday, I still try to limit my palette a fair bit. I don't know. I think maybe if you use too many different options, you don't get a unified feeling to your painting. So I tend to use as few as I possibly can, colour palette wise. But yeah, they're the latest brand I've been using a lot of. It's Michael Harding. The only tips on it to make small interpretation look like the actual thing. I think a lot of that comes with confidence over time. So it's kind of down to repetition and observation first, then repetition, I'd say. So you observe, maybe make some studies from it, and then it's just a matter of trying to incorporate that into your visual library. Then over time you at least hope that you become more confident, and that you start to be able to use fewer lines to describe the object that you're trying to draw. Obviously hands are notoriously difficult, but again, I think breaking them down to their simplest forms or shapes is all obviously helpful. But I'm not, don't think I'm telling you anything new by saying that. Gabriel Franklin. I've seen you and Elisa use Olo markers a lot. I've not used a Ohuhu particularly. I don't really, I'm not, I couldn't, you know, give you my opinion on those. Copic, I like them. Obviously, the Olo are a bit of a better price point, I think, and of equal quality. I think they're also got that versatility where you can kind of build your own combinations of markers. So that's quite a nice, you know, nice thing to be able to do is to, you know, combine the tones that you're working with on an image. So it just means you can flip them around in your hand. But yeah, I mean, they're all at the end of the day decent markers. It's just, I think, a little bit down to personal preference. Olo were kind enough to send me quite a large set of them, you know, with a good range of colours. So, you know, I've been using them since then. Use reference often or mostly draw from memory. Don't use reference too often, unless I'm, say, you know, obviously the cycling paintings are a different matter entirely. They're all from photo excuse me, reference. But for this sort of stuff, there's not much reference needed now. But you know, I have been doing it for quite a long time, like 54 now. So I've learned a few tricks and also bad habits over the years. Richard Dunn, thanks, man. That's kind. I am healing up slowly but steadily. Much love from Indiana. Thanks, Logan. How do you think about layering costumes? Can you share some advice about understanding adding costume details? I think it's really down to you know, your subject matter a bit. It's like a lot of the stuff, especially when we were at Games Workshop, you know, that was very much historically informed. So I think digging around stuff that's actually been made and is functional is really helpful, because you know what you're hoping to do with your image is make something that's maybe fantastic or, you know, sci-fi or far-fetched, but is believable. That's the trick to it all. You know, you want the reader to see your image and think, yeah, that's cool, but it's also, you know, it looks like it could work. So starting with a foundation of, you know, understanding maybe modern armors, or like, you know, when we were doing a lot of the Bretonian stuff, you're looking at like a lot of the kind of crazy armors of the sort of 11th and I guess 12th century. If you dig deep enough, you find that they were doing some bonkers stuff for real back then. So often the things that you think you might have invented or a little far-fetched have already been made So that's a good resource, is to look back at the real, the real stuff, and try and incorporate the feel of that, and maybe push it a little bit beyond its normal. All that Empire stuff was based on sort of 14th, 15th century, I think, Germanic armours, and some of the Italian artisan armours that they made with creatures incorporated into them. Nothing, new really in the Empire. It was just more skulls and more spiky bits. And then with the mecha or sci-fi stuff, I look at anything really. I've done projects where you've been looking at kind of 1950s cars as a kick-off point, or motorbike engines, and you look at like people like Katsuya Terada, and they almost look like vintage electronic, or Russian space race stuff. So there's a lot of resources out there. I think you just have to be try not to be too literal, and go on your Google search, try to look for something that's maybe not directly the subject you're working on, but has some interesting shapes and forms that you can build into your costume design. That's the kind of thing I do. Then with this kind of mecha sci-fi stuff, there's a lot of little shapes in the gestural drawing that I'm doing there, and I try to sort of pick them out as I go along, and almost like build them into a piece of machinery, or something that looks like it has a functionality. But really, a lot of the time, they're just random shapes I've created by this early like gesture scribbling, effectively. When you make your sketches before you clean, do you visualize what you're going to do before placing your pencil? No, not very good at that sort of. Occasionally, what I'll do sometimes is I'll look at an image that's something quite inspiring, or just a cool pose, and I'll try and study it, and then like capture it in your mind and put the image away, and try and draw your version of it. So there's artists like, I know Paul Bonner does that sort of thing. It's a really good way to not be too literal and too photographic. So, but I don't have a outright image defined before I start. But here I started playing with the idea of, we've got two rabbits downstairs in the house, kind of house rabbits. One of them's really well behaved, called Han Solo, and the other one, called Kylo Ren, obviously, is a complete nightmare. Very affectionate, but keeps crapping everywhere, and basically causing havoc. She's definitely the one from the dark side. So here I'm kind of was sort of thinking about you know, rabbit face or nose and some ears, incorporating those shapes into the helmet design. But I may well ditch it, you know, as an idea halfway round. But that's where the initial gestural sort of lines were headed up there. Gabriel Franklin about playing guitar. Yeah, I used to play since the stroke. Yeah, I can barely play. So I've had to put that on hold. Favourite guitarists were probably Hendrix, and then I kind of got into a bit of slide guitar. So there's a great kind of bluesy rock slide player called Derek Trucks, who's kind of makes his guitar sound like a gospel singer. So I was quite into those for a while, but that's on the back burner for the time being. Hopefully I can regain enough movement and control to give it a go again. But yeah, not going to be doing any live shows for a while. Not that I did before. Timo Matic, thanks. Techno Rabbits, yeah. The real Damien, thanks. And thanks to your bro as well, who don't know if he's tuned in as well. And as I said yesterday on the live stream I did on Instagram, I've left the video up there. As I'm sure you all know, I had this incredible response to my condition that I was in, and the GoFundMe that people kind of encouraged me to do. I wasn't sure about it at first, but I had a phenomenal response to it. And aside from saying thanks again, which I did a lot yesterday and I'll continue to do, but this is the best way I can think of, you know, giving a bit back to those people who've, you know, really supported me, not just financially, but kind of, you know, with encouragement and kind words. So again, I said it yesterday, I'll keep saying it, but thanks to all of you really, just for such a humbling and overwhelming response. You know, didn't quite realise just how highly people regarded me, and how generous people would be. So it's quite moving, and I'm really sort of indebted to everyone. So I can, you know, still relatively not new, but you know, I'm a bit unsure about what to live stream, but I'll try and do it consistently. And anyone, you know, if they've got anything they'd like to see me tackle or talk about, you know, please drop me a message and on here on Insta, and just you know, let me know, because I'm still struggling a little with the actual oil painting, but I'm slowly progressing, and as long as you guys don't mind me sort of using it as practice as well as you know, as well as a live stream, you know, I'd be happy to do that. Quite like these Pentel pens I'm using as well. They've just got enough, they're like a firm tip to them, but they've got a little bit of flexibility, so you can get a little bit of line variation, which is quite good for where I'm at with the recovery. Like real fine brush control is quite hard at the moment, but because these just resist enough and give you enough feedback, then they're a really good balance for me. Again, here I'm just looking for interesting shapes. I'm trying to build a kind of collar into his suit here. There's a neck protection, or the Truman Show. Thank you, man. Did you always ink this way? Did you pencil tighter before? Not. I don't know. Yeah, maybe I was tighter. Maybe over the years I've got a little bit more like confident in what I'm doing, or in my, you know, my ability to find the interesting shapes that I'm trying to get into the image. But also, you know, I tried for a while to draw a bit like Jungi, you know, where you go straight on the paper and build the big image up. And I just thought, you know, you're not ever going to match that guy's skills, so why are you doing it? It's fine if you're doing it as a learning exercise, but you know, you don't want to be just another version of him, or you know, a second, even worse, a second-rate version of him. So I think what I tried to do with Jungi, obviously I spent a lot of time with him. I learned a lot from being around him and sketching together, and had some great times and memories. And I did try to sort of emulate a lot of what he was doing, but I also had to be comfortable with, you know, some of my own identity, you know, line and sort of sketch wise. So that's why I've stayed with this technique of you know, putting these loose lines down first. I just think, for me, I come up with a better image that way, and that's your main goal, isn't it? It's not to just, you know, robotically copy, yeah, obviously a master, but you also want to be able to translate some of what you've learned from their work into your own kind of melting pot of influences. Yeah, I agree, Chagger. Is it Chagger Thunder? Yeah. I mean, you know, if I look back as a kid, I spent a lot of time copying, you know, images and work that I liked. So that's, you know, I'm still at this age now, I'm not looking at that stuff that I was looking at then, but it's in there somewhere. It's all part of that melting pot of influences, and they kind of become you over time and, you know, years of doing it. Really, it's not like you just, you know, I love Lucian Freud and Singer Sargent, you know, Matania, Fortunino Matania, and, you know, the list of influencers and artists whose work I love is sort of endless. You know, in modern day, I love the line work of Elisa Ivanova and the painting of Nicolas Uribe. There's so many, you know, Phil Hale's oils are just incredible. There's so many influences there, but I think each of them has had a, you know, a little bit of a reflection in your own work. But I'm not trying to emulate them, you know, mindlessly copy and replicate what they're doing. I've done studies where I've tried to work out technical aspects and, you know, colour palettes and things like that, but at the end of the day, I'm trying to come up with my own thing and hope that you, by doing those studies, you sort of incorporate them into your own arsenal, as it were. Yes, Mars said Simon Lee is incredible. Yeah, absolutely incredible. If you don't know him, I think his Instagram name is Spider Zero, but he's a phenomenal sculptor, and he almost starts like this, these loose lines, and then just morphs the clay into these incredible sculptures. So yeah, I mean, that's another person whose work I've looked at, and obviously I can't directly emulate that in my 2D work, but, you know, there's a bit of it in there. Darius 500, you're looking good. Oh, well, thanks, mate. Trying my utmost to keep recovering. And I've been lucky enough to, you know, spend time with a lot of these really, you know, amazing artists, all with a different skill set and styles. But, you know, pretty sure every time you kind of hang out with these people, a little bit of it rubs off on you. Still a bit clumsy with these lines. Have I been cycling much? No, unfortunately not. That's, I mean, the cruelest thing about this that I've had is it's not taking it away, but I'm having to fight to do all the things that I really love, and it's hard to find the same pleasure that you used to find in them. So cycling, at the moment, I'm too nervous to head out onto the road. I've sort of some balance issues, and like this hand sometimes doesn't really know where it is or what it's doing. So it's fine, you know, when you're in a safe environment like this, but you know, if you're out on the road with cars and, you know, hazards everywhere, I don't want to risk setting my recovery back by, you know, falling off and breaking a wrist or something. So I'm just sticking to indoor turbo riding at the moment. Yeah, big fan of Mobius. Yeah, I met Terada. He's a great guy. I shared an Airbnb with him in Los Angeles with him and Jungi. So that was, you know, like a real pinch me moment, because, you know, I found his work quite early on in his career, really. I remember looking at it when I was at GW at Games Workshop, maybe in, I don't know, early 2000s, and watching a short animated film he did called, I think, Blood of the Last Vampire. So I knew of it, you know, and I'd been trying to sort of not emulate a little bit, but incorporate a bit of what he was doing into my work. So when my lovely friend Lim, who organised the whole trip over there in US, said, "Oh yeah, you'll be sharing the Airbnb with him," I was like, oh my God, I'm not worthy. But yeah, I think Mobius was one of the earliest influences on me that I didn't realise was an influence. So my dad used to be in a band, and he'd occasionally come back with these weird French comics. I'm sure he brought a couple back that maybe they were, I don't know if they were Mobius, but there was a definite, you know, feel of that French, like late 70s, early 80s style to them. So I think they were quite an early influence, and Asterix and Obelix were another one that was a big, you know, thing that I read as a kid. Do you feel like being around other artists in person helps you push yourself? Yeah, and also like, it was just like, I think for me it was like just really nice to hang around with people who were, you know, just loved to draw, and you know, it wasn't a strange thing to be doing while you're having a beer or at a restaurant, or so that was nice in itself. And, you know, meeting Jungi and spending a lot of time with him, you know, when we were doing shows in LA a couple of times. CTN was one, and Lightbox, sorry, with Bobby Chu's show. You just, I don't know, you sort of feel like a bit of a kindred spirit, you know, somebody who likes to sort of draw and put out these weird brain farts that you're doing, and you know, it's just, it's a bit like when I worked at Games Workshop. You sort of surrounding yourself with, you know, really good artists. Obviously you're going to have to up your game a little bit, and you do feel the pressure, but you also, it's a good pressure. It's sort of pressure that brings you on rapidly as an artist, I think. Do I have any art books I recommend? No, I mean, honestly, you know, in my studio here, I've got just what, 1, 2, 3, 4 shelves just full of art books, basically, you know, with a wide range of stuff on there. Anatomy, I think I used the Bridgman books a lot. More recently, I would say there's a really good book by a Korean artist, friend of Jungi's, called Stonehouse, and I think you can get that through Correct Publishing, which is a French publishers who did the big Kopinski. That's a really, really good book, and it kind of breaks, it's very in depth, breaks anatomy down to all its most simple elements, and some quite clever ways of remembering stuff. So that's quite good. Painters, just too many, you know. I've got books with Rembrandt, Freud, Velázquez, Sorolla, Sargent, it just goes on the list. You know, a lot of Rockwell. So I couldn't say there's one definitively amazing book. The Jungi books, obviously, you can't, you know, they're so sort of inspiring and just bonkers, just mighty tomes of crazy doodling. Yeah, I like the Wyeths a little. Also like quite a few of those Brandywine artists from that, you know, that period and subsequent, you know. So, you know, people like Gil Evgren from that golden age of sort of pin-up art. You can't underestimate the skill level that people like that had. Tom Lovell, Dean Cornwell, you know, people like that really. When I say the golden age, it was like, you know, there was so much work for those guys. It was so highly regarded in the US, with, you know, people like Rockwell as well, really forging the way in the Saturday Evening Post and things like that. So there's a lot of resources there as well that I've managed to, you know, dig out books on that are really cool. And they relate also to the fantasy stuff I was doing, in that they're not literal sort of portraiture or landscape art, but they're still oil painting of maybe subject matters that they've, you know, kind of they've invented and created a sort of fantastical, or a, you know, not a literal painting of a subject matter, but, you know, things with a bit of a story to them and a narrative. Hey Brett. Philadelphia, yeah, I'd love to, yeah, love to visit there. It's be a while before I'm flying any long distance flights. I think I did get asked to go to do Lightbox this year by Bobby Chew, but at the moment I'm going to have to sort of play it day by day and see how my recovery goes. Marcel, did you ever? Yeah, I met Claire Wendlin a few times. Yeah, she's really amazing. You know, natural draftswoman. You know, just made it all look so easy. All the things that I was rubbish at, she seemed to be good at. You know, and really sort of crisp line and beautiful imagery, whereas my stuff I don't think I'd say it was beautiful. It's sort of all a bit hard edged and you know, can't do cute or nice things very well. There's another artist called JB Monge who's based out in, I think, in Quebec in Canada, who's really fantastic artist who I looked at a lot. Yeah, I've got the Rain book. That's really good. I think she did a little sketch in it for my daughter Eva as well. So that's a really nice little gift we got from her. So I'm not that satisfied with this one, to be honest. I think, you know, there's some interesting details, but as overall as an image, it's not really doing it for me. It's just you know, a guy standing there. It's probably, this is more the sort of thing that I'd do, you know, as a concept design actually. So I did most recently did some work for, there's a film by the Korean director, I can't remember his name, but I think he did Parasite actually, but with British actor Robert Pattinson, called Mickey 17. So I did a lot of costume design on that, and these were the sort of images I'd be coming up with. Whereas the other stuff I've been doing on previous pages, I've managed to get a bit more movement and dynamism into it. This one's a bit boring and static, so I'm sorry it's not my A game here. I haven't been for a while. Yeah, Truman, yeah, I did for Mickey 17. I have to post it on Insta. I did a sort of pretty much the costume that he wears in it, with the, I think with the peaked cap with the ear flaps. I think I did that. Or I did a sketch that kind of translated into that, and a load of other bits and bobs. It was with a really cool team I've done quite a bit of work with for movie stuff, so it was nice. So you can see it's all right, this, but you know, not brilliant really, to be honest. Like the one I did yesterday is a bit more, I don't know, well planned out, and it's an image as a whole. And then the one previous to that, you know, there's a lot more movement and dynamism in it. So, you know, this one, yeah, you're right, it's a Fallout kind of vibe and a bit of a design rather than a whole image. So sometimes, I mean, you know, it's not the end of the world, is it? But sometimes that's the way it goes. It's something that might have a few interesting elements on it, but as a whole isn't a great image. And I'm still sort of, as I said earlier, there's still some difficulty with the drawing since the stroke. So like, you know, even that line I'm just putting in there is a little bit lacking fluidity and control. Once the arm's not resting on the paper, it's very easy for it to float off and you know, do slightly random things. So they're the sort of things I'm getting frustrated with as well, in that, you know, yeah, it's still a cool, or you know, it's an okay image, and the line works all right, but you know, when you know in your mind that, you know, you're not placing the lines exactly where you wanted them to. It's a bit I don't know, frustrating. What sketchbooks do I use? What pen am I using? Sethams. So this is a Pentel Touch SES. I think that's SES 15C. Yeah. So it's kind of a flexible nib, but it's still quite rigid. And the sketchbook I'm using is Leuchtturm 1917. So they're quite nice, good quality paper, a bit whiter than the Moleskine, but a similar feel to it. So they're just one that I think I don't remember who recommended them to me. I think it was Ian McHugh, another artist you should check out if you don't know his work, but I think he was using them and he said you've got to try them out. So they're really nice, you know, smoothish, little bit of bite to it, but nice and white as well. And then, as I'm sure anyone who's been looking at my Insta and you know, my reels that I've been posting on there, I've been doing a lot of these Olo marker, adding a bit of tone. So at this point, and wherever I'm adding the tone, I try to take most of the pencil off, because the alcohol markers just tend to smudge it and make a dark, kind of unpleasant mess. So I take most of that off and then use maybe like, you know, 2 variations of tone, or 3 at a max. So this is, I think this is, yeah, cool grey 3. So I tend to do 3, 5 and maybe 7 sometimes, but they're quite a nice, you know, they have a bit of bleed to them when you put them on, so you can't be too like, there's no point in trying to be too accurate with them because they'll bleed anyway. So in that sense, they're quite nice because you can kind of block stuff in a bit quicker. I also use the 0 sometimes just to sort of almost flood the area with a bit of the alcohol, and then go back with the 3 and just put a bit of tone in, and it just waters it down. Well, not water, but alcohols it down a little. And then by doing that, you get a little sort of intermediate tone in between the 3 and the, maybe it's more like a 2 and a 1 there. Favourite Space Marine Legion, Tim? I couldn't tell you. I didn't play the game. I drew the images, but I never played the game, so I was treated with a bit of suspicion by the powers that be when I first started there, because I wasn't actually a fan of the game. I like the imagery, but I didn't play. So I couldn't say a favourite, really. There were projects I enjoyed and sort of images I created that I'm you know, quite proud of or I like. But you know, I really love the Space Marine Codex cover I did with the Ultramarines on, with Marnius Calgar kind of blasting away at the background. I did quite a nice black and white piece with the, oh god, I can't even remember what they're called, something Ravens. And also a couple of pieces I particularly liked that were Witch Hunters, because we were just allowed a bit more sort of freedom to go a bit bonkers with those, so they were quite cool to work on. Did I work for a TTRPG? I did something for a game called Nomura, which is like it's like an IP almost for a Dungeons and Dragons role-playing game. So it was quite a cool one. It was sort of a bit Fallout-y, 1950s inspired, with magic and you know, kind of elfy type creatures in there. So that's maybe the one you're thinking of. Did you get to keep the originals? I did keep some of the originals, and I do have some of the real key pieces here in my studio, and they're basically I'm hoping that they're like a pension, you know, so I don't intend selling them anytime soon. There is an auction coming up on Facebook soon, which is in fact I think it starts Sunday, which has been run by a couple of the guys who sell magic art and Warhammer art, and some of my ex-colleagues at GW have really kindly donated to try and help support me as I'm, you know, going through all this stuff. So there's a piece by Paul Bonner, Dave Gallagher, I think there's an Adrian Smith in there, and they're going to auction those pieces off on Sunday night, I think it is. So I'll put a link on for that on my Insta, I think. That's very humbling again. Did I ever draw the Alien? No, I didn't. Maybe I should. I did love the movie though. So you can see how I build it up here with these tones. And I just think, I mean, I think I quite like them because, you know, they're quite quick. Although look at that line, that was terrible. got to go so slow sometimes. Yeah, they just kind of flesh out what is, you know, a relatively simple line drawing, and you can, you know, make them into something that feels a bit more polished and, you know, 3D. And they're really quite quick to use, so really got into them lately. Murder Falcon. Yeah, maybe that's my next stream. I would like to know what people would like to see on the future streams. I'll have to probably leave this one relatively soon, so if anyone's got any suggestions what they'd like to see, give me a few ideas and I'll think about it for the next one. Yeah, I'm sorry this one didn't go quite as well as some of the others I've done before, but I hope it's still been, you know, relatively interesting. Not too boring listening to me waffling away. I'm still like, you know, it's a good opportunity for me to try and hone a bit of the fine motor skills that I've lost while doing these, so it's quite rewarding for me as well. Cyber Spider-Man. I did do a couple of Spider-Man, yeah. I remember doing one on the plane to LA just after Stan Lee died, actually. Yeah, I could do Cyber Spider-Man. I did do a sketch of Hobie Brown, I think, as well, in one of the old sketchbooks. Tiger or Pirate. Warthog Pirate. I'm liking the sound of that one. Yeah. Yeah, that could be cool. Pieces from your favourite artist blending. Yeah, Sushi Robot. Try to, you know, get a bit of a flick on these to help get that metallic sheen to it. And does it work better if I, you know, do it as a scheduled live stream? As I say, I'm not that up to scratch on this live streaming, so this is the first time I've scheduled one. Do people get notifications if I do that? Is that better to do it that way? And then do you want to see my face while I'm drawing? You know, a dual camera thing. I don't think you do want to see my face. The other nice thing about these pens actually is you can kind of layer them up, you know, same with all alcohol markers, I guess, but you can go back over to get a slightly deeper tone to it as well. Monkey. I don't think they'd have done that, mate, honestly. We were kept in our place as artists. We were not given royal names by the powers that be. Definitely not. you'd love to see. Thanks, Jagger Thunder. Hoping to get a. I'm running an iMac from 2011 for all of my sort of retouching, Photoshop work, emails, and it's so old and outdated, and I don't update the operating system for fear of, kind of losing things and making other things like the Photoshop version I'm using, unusable. So I've took the plunge and got a new computer on the way. So the guy that's helping me out with it is assured me it's very easy to stream with dual, with two cameras using, your phone and the one in the computer. So that's something I might look at doing if people are genuinely interested in it. And one thing I remember talking to Jungi about, I sort of started to do it here, but I've ditched it, really, the arm. But he always liked the idea of combining hard and soft textures. So you'd have an armor piece, and I think I do it a bit with all this pipe work, but you'd have a hard-edged sort of metallic or rigid armor piece, and then he'd have a undergarment or a sort of jacket that it was attached to, or elements of the whole design that were like fabric or quilted fabric. And I always think that's quite a nice technique to use when you're sort of designing and coming up with new costume ideas. So sometimes I try to mix up sort of soft and hard edge. So obviously here I was going to do a bare arm, but kind of bailed on it a bit. A tiny point of view camera for my pen. Oh man, that might just throw my wonky stroke hand off even more if I've got a camera on the end of it. I don't know. Wouldn't it make everyone feel a bit sick as well? So I'm going to leave it there. Go and get some dinner in a bit. Maybe have a little beer. So I'll just take my phone and zoom in a bit so you can see some of the detail. You can see those, it's going to go out of focus, but on the face there you get quite a nice tonal variation there. You can, it's not too bad as far as sort of getting skin tones down if you're careful and work, very light to darker. So yeah, that's that. Hope you liked it. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll do this again. Please make sure you follow and share and like and all that, and let me know any more ideas as far as the next stream, and I'll consider some options. Yeah, the earpiece is a bit of a rabbit design, but okay. Thanks everyone. Happy Friday night, and look after yourselves. See you soon.